Bloomberg Tech is live from coast to coast with Caroline Hyde in New York and Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
This is Bloomberg Tech. Coming up, Micron warns of heavy spending on production to meet demand for its memory chips. We'll break down the company's results. Plus, Alibaba says it's aiming to generate $100 billion in cloud and AI revenue within the next 5 years, even as earnings come under pressure. And Uber and Rivian, they team up, with Uber set to invest up to $1.25 billion in Rivian's robotaxi fleet. We'll have the details on the deal. But first, we have the details on the macro picture. Once again, stocks are under pressure today. This is because oil pushes higher, the conflict intensifying in the Middle East, and energy infrastructure under fire. We're currently seeing up 3% on Brent, but boy, had it spiraled higher earlier. Huge moves in the bond market start to dial down. We've seen 18 basis points on the 2-year. Extraordinary moves in the UK on its gilts. Look, we are worried about inflationary pressure and the ability of central banks to make a move. We saw the ECB, the BOE, and of course the Fed yesterday and the Japanese overnight all keep rates on hold, but all of them eyeing whether or not policy moves will be needed in the near term. Move on to individual stocks because Micron down 2.6% when the chip maker posted a quadrupling in its revenue. It saw a 600% increase in its earnings per share. However, it is spending big. And we want to get the details with Dean Abbas because the stock has run up because of, well, the pricing pressure in memory chips in particular that aids the revenue and the profitability of Micron, but it's going to have to spend to keep up with demand.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that the numbers they posted yesterday would cause the stock to go up. But as you mentioned, there's a bit of an issue here. The reason the stock is going up, as you said, is because we are seeing an almost unprecedented increase in the price of memory. What's gone on is that there's a thing called high bandwidth memory, which is really critical for all of the AI chips that NVIDIA has been talking about this week at its GTC conference. And, while that's demand has accelerated, the three makers of that memory, that's Micron, Samsung, and SK Hynix, have been focusing on that product, which is in short supply, and they have focused less on other memory products, things like DRAM. So the people that use DRAM, we're talking about PC makers, phone makers, car makers, are paying dramatically higher prices for that. That's good for Micron, and you saw that in those numbers. But Micron and Samsung has also announced extra spending, so they're trying to expand their capital expenditures, build more facilities, make more of this memory, both kinds. And so you're seeing a forecast for higher capex this year, for a continued increase in capex next year, and so investors are trying to wrangle with what all of that means.
Was there a risk when we go to HBM4 in particular, and just the desire for more these high bandwidth memory chips in AI accelerators? Is there any risk that NVIDIA uses SK Hynix or Samsung more than Micron?
So there have been some reports, the Semi-Analysis had something out a couple of weeks ago raising concerns about whether Micron will be, as important to NVIDIA's next Vera Rubin chips as some of its competitors. Micron has said this week that they are now shipping that HBM4 in volume, and they have said that it is designed for Vera Rubin. I think we're waiting to see what that means, what exactly NVIDIA is going to use, who and how much. But that has been a concern, and that has been weighing on the stock at various points, even though the stock has been overall has been up.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just a bit of profit taking on the day. Dean Abbas, who has been incredibly busy this week at GTC and now on Micron, we so appreciate you joining this morning. Look, let's turn our attention to the Fed Chair, Jay Powell, who says that, look, while AI holds long-term promise, its near-term impact may actually be adding to inflation, such as with these chips, as companies ramp up investment. Just take a listen.
In the short term, what's happening is we're building data centers everywhere, and that's actually putting pressure on all kinds of goods and services that go into building these things. So that's actually probably pushing inflation up at the margin.
That perspective comes as investors continue to pass the real-world payoff, or not, from AI. For more, Marta Norton, Empower Chief Investment Strategist, joins us. Look, Micron speaks to this inflationary pressure that we see coming from AI, Marta. Just dig in there as to what Fed Chair Powell was saying. How much are we likely to see just bottlenecks being the issue?
Well, it is the question, or one of the questions of the hour when we think about AI in 2026 and 2027. We know the timeline for the AI build is quite long. We know it's quite expensive, and we know that it is creating bottlenecks, not just for memory chips, but also for energy. So there's all these kind of hot pockets that are related to the build. I don't know if we're looking at a Fed chair or a committee that's saying that this is going to excessively move core inflation, but I think it's coming at an inopportune time when, of course, we also have an oil shock and we have an inflation picture just that continues to linger. So I think it's more the sum total of all the different questions from AI, from energy, from lingering inflation that puts us in the position we're in today.
Go to the oil shock, Marta. Go to the conflict with the Middle East and what that means for investor demand right now.
Well, it's so interesting right now because Powell couched his comments yesterday around inflation uncertainty by also noting that typically wisdom would suggest that you look through an oil price shock because it's not a permanent change in inflation. And in fact, when you look at the summary of economic projections yesterday, yes, the committee moved inflation expectations higher for this year, but then the expectation, and of course these have a wide range of outcomes around them, but the expectations for next year weren't really that much higher than they already were. And so that would reflect this idea that we're looking at a near-term disruption, but not necessarily longer term. But of course, the jury's out. We're seeing destruction of energy infrastructure in real time. And that's one of those tipping variables that could put us in a much more difficult position from an energy and oil price shock perspective.
I mean, boy, does it put a difficult position on Asia and Europe, far more so than the US in particular. It's interesting that we have a meeting between the Japanese leader and the United States today, and we are expecting actually nuclear deals to be announced from that. But how are you seeing, in particular, a long-term change in geopolitics and what that means more ultimately for investor risk-on attitude?
Well, I mean, the observation that this is a very different scenario for the U.S. versus the rest of the world is spot on because, of course, the U.S. is the world's largest producer of natural gas and of oil. That doesn't necessarily shelter it from all shocks on the oil front. It certainly provides protection on the natural gas front. And Asia and Europe are in very different positions. And we're seeing them kind of thread the needle on the geopolitics front. They're not necessarily putting pressure on the U.S. to stop its attacks, but they're certainly not joining in it. And of course, we also have all the new dynamics that were released last year around tariffs. So there does seem to be a shifting of how countries are interrelating to one another. I think one of the things we'll want to watch longer term is what kind of regionalization does this create from how economies operate versus how they've been operating on a much more global scale. But I don't think we want to jump to conclusions there. There's still a lot to understand about how things are unfolding.
Look, I'm going to thread a difficult needle here of how it impacts technology. Because there have been stark warnings that if infrastructure is decimated in the Middle East, those pools of capital that have been very important to some of the big foundational modules here in the United States, the AI growth story, has been dependent on Middle Eastern money, and that might be diverted to far more immediate concerns, Marta. Is that something you're hearing about?
That's a great observation. It isn't something that I've heard about, but I think it's a very astute topic to raise. I've also heard folks talk a little bit more about the supply chain disruption that could come from AI if we're looking at places like Taiwan and we're looking at manufacturing capabilities and there's an energy import element there. What can we expect in terms of what that disruption looks like and how does that ultimately play through to AI cost? Again, a lot of the jury is still out, so I don't want to assume too much. But right now we're seeing tech, Mag 7, software, we're seeing strength in a lot of those areas, at least relative to the sell-offs that we're seeing elsewhere. But should we start to see some disruption, both from a funding perspective and from the perspective of the AI supply chain, I think that's something that could, at least be a headwind for some of those areas that have been holding up well.
Does it, and I might not be your area of expertise, but does it mean anything for the IPO pipeline and the idea that we were set to be having some of the biggest companies, private companies, coming to the market?
Well, IPO and M&A, those were areas that people were looking at as being a real source of excitement for 2026 with a lot of momentum building. Again, I don't want to assume too much on what this geopolitical event means for the broad economy and whether it unhinges it altogether. My base case at the moment, even though we're seeing energy infrastructure getting destroyed in real time, is that this does have a near-term end point. We're not necessarily looking at the most severe scenario. So a lot of the trends that were in play, my estimation is that they remain in play, but we're on a pause for the moment. Of course, we have to keep our options open on that front.
We do. Marta Norton, a time of uncertainty, and we so appreciate you joining us on it from Empower. Coming up, Alibaba sets an ambitious $100 billion target for cloud and AI revenue, even as earnings come under pressure. That's next. This is Bloomberg Tech. Alibaba says it's aiming to generate $100 billion in cloud and AI revenue within the next 5 years. This is CEO Eddie Wu really laid out the ambitious target after the company reported a 67% drop in quarterly earnings alongside some pretty sluggish revenue growth. For more, Bloomberg's Asia stocks reporter, who's here in New York for us, Hyokyoung Lee. Hyokyoung, why the pressure on the profitability in particular?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question that all the investors are asking. And I think the 67% drop in net income pretty much shows how much how much investment in the quick commerce or the AI are eating into the profitability of the company. I mean, the 60% drop, it was a huge miss, and it was the smallest net income since early 2024. So it was a big disappointment to investors.
That being a big disappointment, even with these big, bold ambitions to drive up the revenue side, the profitability side, by charging more for cloud, charging more for what is their AI agentic offering. How are we seeing sort of investors pay attention to this in the stock? Because at the moment, it's having its worst day since October of last year, at one point of April of last year.
Yeah, the stock was down almost like 10% earlier this morning, and investors are apparently very unhappy. And I think especially under this macro environment, investors tend to punish these statements unless they accompanied by some clear profitability paths or the monetization plan. And then especially the competition, the AI is getting heated in China. Alibaba is facing steeper competition from Tencent. And if you look at the share price in March, Tencent has been performing a lot better than Alibaba in the month of March. So you can see there how investors are more hopeful and more optimistic about one company's AI plan than the other. So the how it's going to profit rather than how much revenue is going to be making in coming years might be the bigger focus for investors going forward if you want to guess about its future share price.
Hyokyoung Lee, I'm very pleased to say, with us when it matters on All Things Asia. Thank you very much indeed. Look, let's stick with the Alibaba story. And Jacob Cook is with us, WPIC CEO, joining us. And your expertise really has been in the e-commerce and marketing areas within Asian businesses and companies looking to penetrate Asia, but you're also looking much more at AI adoption as well. First, with Alibaba's just general numbers, how worrying is it that their profitability is being so hit by competition?
It's not that worrying. I think this was very well announced. They were telling us about the investments in 2025 that were going into AI, and they've also announced that that's going to double in 2026. So that probably holds in terms of pressure on income. Some of the numbers were pretty optimistic, and certainly in terms of the AI announcements and what they're doing with their token hub, we see pretty good potential. And again, I think this has been part of a well-announced plan that's in a couple of years of execution right now and seems to be relatively on schedule.
Okay, let's talk about what's on schedule when it comes to AI adoption and competing against, say, like a Tencent. We were just hearing from Hyokyoung about why Tencent's higher. Many people feeling that the WeChat optionality that it gives you, particularly with OpenClaw and agentic AI penetration, is just far clearer. How is Alibaba going to make sure that its AI tech stack works?
Well, I think there's two things. One, Quen's open source model is incredible. I've got it running on my new M5 laptop right now, and it actually is one of the best models that you can get running locally. So they've got incredible adoption there. And you talk about OpenClaw. And then again, what are these agents and the agentic AI going to be doing? They're going to be buying tokens. So opening up that token hub is great. And let's not forget, I mean, this was their 10th quarter of triple-digit AI revenue. So when they're talking about these massive, ambitious goals of 100 billion in revenue, I think there's a real clear path for them to get there. And, another thing that we notice in China as well is, they may not be dealing with the top models or winning the contest there, but the adoption rates among users, even OpenClaw, a little later adoption there, but now is having more uses, installations inside China than the US. So I think all of those adoption rates, in China in general with the way the AI market looks like, and the willingness of employers now to spend on tokens to enhance the productivity of their offices, I think is very positive and should lend to more triple-digit growth, throughout 2026.
I mean, Jacob, you've always been this great read on the consumer over in Asia and China in particular. What's it like on the streets? The sort of fanfare, the hype around OpenClaw?
It's not just on the streets, it's all over social media. It's pretty amazing. And the levels of innovation that are coming out, they're using different models. It's running so much more locally than the installations did, but it's basically allowed on premise to come back to being an option. They don't need to, have a very tech background to open up, AWS or Alien equivalents. They can actually just go buy older Mac hardware that's readily available on the market and get some of these systems running up in their apartments or houses or offices. So that's really allowed it to go from being maybe having a very technical background to general acceptance among the masses.
Why Mac Minis are flying off the shelves, why Raspberry Pi in the UK share prices spiraled higher. Jacob, what, though, of the pushback from a regulatory perspective? If you own Alibaba, if you own Tencent or any of the Chinese giants, you know about regulatory risk. Well, we're starting to see regulators and state governments slightly push back against OpenClaw just running rife within state-backed businesses.
Well, I would say that would be the case, but the government, in terms of where we operate in Jiangsu and Zhejiang, just outside of Shanghai, there's been very supportive. There's even been local government classes, for getting people to set these up. So we've never seen adoption from the governments like that. So I don't think that there might be some security with OpenClaw, but let's not also forget Moonshot launched KimiClaw too. So there's going to be alternatives that do roughly the same thing. That might be just a little bit more suited to the Chinese market too, as well. A little bit more firewall compatible as well.
Let's just therefore put this all in context, Jacob. As the brands that you work with are looking to access an Asian buyer, as people are looking to take on the various ways of getting to consumers via chatbots, how does that landscape look for you right now?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of AI in general, it's made accessing Asia way more easy. The chatbots are probably not the best way to interact with your customers at that point, but being able to use, generative, so, you're maybe taking model shots for China and being able to adjust them for Japan and Korea, not having to do 3 shoots, for example, being able to change your languages, being able to interact with your customers in multiple languages throughout Asia has really kind of laid economies of scale to being able to get access to the entire region and not looking at this like, maybe 12 different markets and more looking at it like just a couple. AI is going to make that easier and easier. And inventory projections, we're looking at social media now to see, what, might be selling really well in the summer. All these things are really helping, brands get access to the market at cheaper, or a smaller barrier to entry than they were doing pre-AI.
Who else should a potential marketeer be wanting to access Asia be looking at? Look, we talked Alibaba, Tencent, but there are plenty of other options.
Well, Kimi-K is one of the best on-premise models that exists out there too, and that's by Moonshot. So there's just a ton. I mean, we have an office in Hangzhou too, and there's just AI companies all around us. I mean, DeepSeek's not too far from Alibaba. Douyin's sandwiched in between them. Red Note's in that neighborhood. So there's just a whole environment of innovation, very similar to what's been going on in Silicon Valley. So, we don't know all of the total winners, but the barrier to entry, again, with AI, it's smaller and smaller. DeepSeek was launching, their models with only 125 people. So we would expect a lot more innovation and it's going to be an exciting year. That's for sure.
Jacob Cook, WPIC CEO. It's always great to catch up with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, coming up, the pressure on social media ramps up here in the US. California joining the chorus of localities calling for bans. More on that next. This is Bloomberg Tech. OpenAI, well, it's expanding its push into coding with plans to acquire Astral. Now, that's a startup that makes Python tools for developers. The deal hasn't yet closed, but the companies say that it will bring Astral's team into OpenAI's Codex effort and broaden its suite of developer services. OpenAI, of course, has been racing with competitors like Anthropic, Microsoft, and startups like Cursor to appeal to corporate customers using AI as coding assistants. Meanwhile, social media companies, well, they're facing increasing pressure from mounting lawsuits and laws dictating age limits on their platforms. In a particular blow to the industry, California, home to Meta, course, TikTok operates there too, but it's home to Google, Snap. It's joined the list of US states and countries globally proposing a ban on social media for children. Let's get the latest from Bloomberg's Kurt Wagner, who's covering the industry, who's put out a Tech in Depth about this all today. And really, home turf, could this be a reality?
I think it could be a reality. We're definitely seeing a snowball effect here. And Caroline, to the point you just made, the fact that California is getting in on the mix here, I think, is pretty significant. It's certainly symbolic of how big this issue has become and how strong this conversation has happened. Now, I want to be clear, a lot still has to happen for these sort of proposals, these bills to become laws. But we are talking about a thing that has really been a little bit on the periphery for the last several years. And now we're seeing California, several countries in Europe, of course, Australia, start to float and push for these social media bans. So I think that's pretty significant.
As you say, a lot has to happen for the bans to come into force. And look, we've been waiting decades for any sort of talk to become a walk in terms of law on social media, and it hasn't occurred in the United States. But what's interesting is we are seeing more courts ruling or potentially about to rule on the addiction of these sorts of offerings as well. Can you bring us the latest on what's happening in LA and New Mexico?
Yeah, so for the last several weeks in Los Angeles, Meta and YouTube, so Instagram and YouTube, have been facing these allegations that they are intentionally creating their products to be addictive. And right now, the jury is deliberating whether, that is in fact the case. The jury has been deliberating for 3.5 days at this point, so we're sort of on pins and needles waiting for an answer. But this is really the first in thousands of similar cases accusing these platforms of creating addictive technology. And so it's meaningful in that it's gonna sort of set the narrative around the rest of these cases that are coming later this year. And as you can imagine, Caroline, if these companies are deemed to be, intentionally making their products addictive, that only adds more fuel to this fire for lawmakers who are already trying to rein them in.
And of course, companies such as Meta would dispute that sort of typecasting and in many ways have put in place a lot of new safety tools for parents and children to use, but one to keep a track of. Bloomberg's Kurt Wagner, we so appreciate you joining us. Now, coming up, electric boat maker ARC looks to expand beyond the consumer market into work and actually defense vessels too. We'll talk to the CEO about its latest fundraise to do just that. This is Bloomberg Tech. Welcome back to Bloomberg Tech. Let's check in on markets because they're on tenterhooks, to put it mildly, as we see conflict seemingly intensify in the Middle East, particularly involving the infrastructure of energy. That's why Brent crude is up 4.4%. We've seen it spiral ever higher. NASDAQ and stock markets, risk assets more generally, have been on the downside. Particularly keep an eye on the bond market as we see yields have spiked on the 2-year here in the US, significantly in the UK. In Europe, there is a concern about inflationary pressure. Certainly, that's a lot of the questioning for all of the central bankers that we heard from overnight and into today. That's Japan, Europe, UK, and the United States, of course, had been yesterday. Let's move into what's happening in terms of individual stocks. Look, there is AI news, as always, and we're up by 2.8% in Xiaomi. This is as the company announces an update to its SU7 electric vehicle, but also released its latest artificial intelligence models. And really, this refresh seems to be buoying investor sentiment when the rest of the market had been down over there, so it is a key outperformer. Let's talk elsewhere in the EV space, though, because another big development happening closer to home. Uber, Rivian teaming up, with Uber set to invest up to $1.25 billion in Rivian's robotaxi fleet. For more, Bloomberg's consumer apps and gig economy reporter Natalie Lung joins us now. And wow, Uber's been busy. This is its upteenth partnership that it's been announcing?
Yes, there's been more than 20 partnerships, and most of them are struck in the past year. And today it's about Rivian. They already committed $300 million of that investment, and they're going to buy 10,000 robotaxis to launch in San Francisco and Miami starting in 2028. So it will take some time to ramp up, but they're starting to, put together these arrangements to piece together this narrative that they can be a commercialization partner for these developers.
They're the platform. They're not under competitive threat from these robotaxi makers. They can just harness them, and then it's all about the infrastructure that's needed. When we look at perhaps what Rivian needs to get these on the road, it's going to be what, charging facilities and cleaning? What happens?
Yeah, so there's a lot of sort of the unglamorous work that goes behind running fleets, the charging, the daily cleaning. What if people lost an item, they have to retrieve it, someone has to pick it up. And so Uber wants to be that sort of partner for these developers.
And what do we know about Rivian and the R2 robotaxis?
So they're trying to add a new in-house autonomy chip and a new LiDAR sensor into this new R2 vehicle starting in 2027. So that's when you see production happening, and that's when Uber will probably make the purchases and ramp it up. And this is really part of their broader ambitions to want to produce these consumer vehicles for individuals.
Natalie Lang, it's great to have you. Thank you very much indeed on all things Uber and Rivian. Look, we can stick with autonomous, or at least electric, and go from road to waters. Electric boat maker ARC has raised $50 million that it aims to expand beyond leisure vehicles with tugboats, ferries, defense vehicles. Let's discuss this all with ARC CEO, Mitch Lee. Mitch, for the cynics among us, maybe someone would say, of course they become a defense company. How much was this a pull in terms of demand, not a push from your VCs?
It was very much a pull for us. From day one of the company, we've always had the vision that we wanted to go electrify and power everything on the water. And we are just doing that even faster than we expected because of the incredible demand we've seen across both the commercial and the defense sectors.
How will you use your technology that you've proved out in the consumer realm into the world of commercial? I mean, already you've been developing a tugboat. How does that look like some sort of, well, case study that you bring into the defense realm?
Yeah, I'll start with electric propulsion is just a fundamentally better technology for the water than combustion. This is very similar to the transition that rail went through many decades ago, and now the marine industry is transitioning over to better technology. We've developed that technology, we've hardened it in the consumer space with our consumer boats. We've scaled up production of that, we've built the team around that and the credibility that we know what we're doing. And now we're taking that same technology and deploying it into the commercial and defense sectors to electrify those fleets and make them more reliable, give them greater uptime, better performance, and better operating costs.
When we think about how much you will be making, I mean, we see the boat, the consumer-focused one, you're building that. How much are you having to work in partnership with you know, the key primes? Will you be building out an entire fleet for them, or is it more about just the propulsion and the engines?
What we specialize in is in that electric powertrain and basically the technology platform powering these vessels. So the motors and the battery packs, the wiring, the thermal controls, the firmware, software, telemetry, all of those systems. We do design the vessels around those powertrains as well, but we do that in partnership with commercial operators, with defense primes. So we are approaching this through the lens of partnerships where we bring what we do best, which is that electric powertrain, and partner with vessel manufacturers or shipyards, boatyards.
We've just seen the VCs that are backing you on this latest round, $50 million Series C. A lot of them very focused on defense tech, very focused on American dynamism, to use a phrase. Has that been helpful in terms of the partnerships?
Absolutely. These are a fantastic group of investors. We are thrilled to have their support behind us as we continue to scale as a company. I mean, Eclipse and Menlo, Lower Carbon, Necessary, Andreessen Horowitz, these are amazing investors, and we're lucky to have their support and their enthusiasm for what it is that we're doing.
What it is that you now need? The 50 million, is it about going to market? Is it about sales? Is it about still getting the technologists in-house?
There's so much demand for the technology that we're bringing to market. This is very much a supply side problem for us. We need to ramp up our supply of the technology that we're building. That's increasing production of the consumer boats we're making. It's increasing production and the speed at which we're bringing the powertrains to the commercial and defense markets as well. So this is really an accelerant on our ability to supply these sectors with this electric technology.
I mean, they look really cool, and our team has been on them before. How many have you made in the consumer realm? How many are already being contracted in the commercial and the defense realm?
Yeah, we are now making multiple boats a week out of our Los Angeles-based factory on the consumer side, so on the smaller vessel side. We are under contract for $160 million worth of tugboats, and I can't disclose much more about this, but we are working with a major defense prime on autonomous surface vessels, so basically drone ships out on the water.
Mitch, unfortunately, defense is front and center right now. And we think about a Middle Eastern conflict that does impact supply chains. How much are you able to keep your supply chain US and local? How much are we now self-sufficient in the terms of electric vehicle batteries that you need?
Yeah, we are a Los Angeles-based company. We have 200 people working out of our headquarters here in Los Angeles. We pride ourselves on making things here in America. It certainly helps our supply chain that we do this locally. That doesn't mean that we are entirely insulated from disruption in supply chains across the world, but we've got a big jump start on this and have since we first started this company 5 years ago.
ARC CEO Mitch Lee, it's great to catch up with you. Congratulations on the fundraise and the scaling of the business. Now,
thank you for having me.
Coming up, we'll discuss the race for leadership between AI labs, what it means for the labor market too. Ethan Choi of Coastal Ventures. Stick around, there's a Bloomberg Tech. Time now for Talking Tech, and first up, K-pop demon hunters. They're heading out on a world tour. Netflix is seeking to capitalize on its most popular movie ever by planning live shows next year featuring songs from the film ahead of a planned sequel. Plus, Samsung is devoting a record amount of capital, $73 billion, to seize the lead in AI semiconductors from Korean rival SK Hynix. Now, look, the tech giant is hiking investments 22% this year as it sees a surge in orders for high-bandwidth memory and server-grade storage. And Google is moving ahead with plans for a major data center in Michigan. And the project requires the company to cover the full cost of adding new clean power. The deal is unusual, featuring a 20-year electricity contract for as much as 1 gigawatt of power, but it may serve as a playbook for other firms desperate for electricity to power the AI boom. And look, discussions on the AI boom and productivity promised, and the impact has dominated conversations by tech leaders and policymakers of late. But how far does the AI boom have left to go? Our next guest says infinitely. Ethan Choi, partner at Coastal Ventures, joins us now. So we're at the first innings. How much more can actually the economy be able to support an infinite demand, as it seems, for compute and for the latest AI agent?
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Look, we're just at the beginning stages. I say we're not even in the first innings yet. The biggest constraint today is data centers and gigawatts of compute. But in terms of demand, I view it as infinite. We haven't even scratched the surface of robotics starting to infiltrate our workplaces, our homes. And we're just beginning to have agents in the enterprise that can do things across the enterprise at the intelligence level and at the speed of humans. And so we're just at the very beginning.
Just at the very beginning of the pushback as well, in many ways. And I'm interested, actually, as to first whether we push back against some of the valuations that we're seeing at the moment, Ethan. I got to speak with Gradient yesterday, who'd just been raising a new fund, talking about some of the numbers involved in the latest funding rounds. Darren Shiraz, just hear what he had to say.
We actually think that there is a bubble in certain parts of AI. There are bubbles. There is a bubble in foundational model companies, contenders to OpenAI, contenders to Google, contenders to xAI and Anthropic. When it comes to a lot of these other companies that are raising $1 billion here or there, it seems as though those are a lot of venture capitalists or investors that want to chase the next OpenAI. But realistically, the moat at the model layer is just capital. How much money can you raise?
Coast was backed OpenAI, Are people in VC still trying to chase investments right now? Are the rounds too high, some of the foundational models and even the applications?
Look, it's clear that we have clear leaders at the LLM level for the foundational models. And today here in the US, it's really 4 companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, and Google Gemini. But there's a lot of research being done on novel model architectures, things like state space models, neurosymbolic models, math-based models. And there is a lot of optimism that there'll be some kind of leap ahead of the transformer architecture that was so fundamental to ChatGPT and GPT-3 that caused this AI boom. And so, to some degree, it's justified that VCs like us and others are going to back teams that are going to take a crack at building the next OpenAI and Anthropic. And if there's a company that has that potential with a research team that has the caliber to produce a novel model architecture, it's the kind of bets that we should be making as an industry. Now, are the valuations too high? You could argue that, but we have to work backwards in some ways. These teams need to hire very expensive researchers. They need to have gigawatts of compute to train models, and that's very, very expensive. And as you think about the cap table, we have to make sure that the founders and the team are incentivized. And to some degree, if they're going to raise hundreds of millions or $1 billion out of the gate, it means working backwards. If we're going to buy 20% as VCs, then the math kind of takes care of itself in terms of the valuation. So that's where we are today, somewhat justified, a little overvalued.
Ethan, can Silicon Valley venture, can American venture, can developed world venture support the sort of numbers that are involved if Middle Eastern money becomes harder to access at this moment?
Yes. Look, today there's a lot of debate about whether the model companies should be profitable and self-sustaining. I don't believe that's the right approach. We're just at the very beginning, and there's a lot of R&D left to do. There's a lot of business model transformation that's happening today. Obviously, with the SaaSpocalypse, fundamental existing business models are being disrupted heavily. And so it's a time where we are, as an industry, still figuring out what to do in terms of how to fund all these investments. Today, at least, globally, the foundational model companies have been able to raise capital. But at some point, I do believe it becomes somewhat sovereign. And at Coastal Ventures, we have been investing behind themes in companies like Savum and Sakata in Japan, where they're raising money and being funded by governments. And there is a question, and we're seeing some of this play out with the DOW between OpenAI and Anthropic. Does the government step in and through either big contracts continue to fund some of the developments and the investments that need to be made into compute and to the R&D for the research models? Yeah.
Ethan Choi, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut this short. As we talk about sovereign, we have to go over to the US government now, who is meeting with the Japanese head of state. We appreciate you, Ethan Choi of Coastal Ventures. Let's just go now to the White House, where President Trump is indeed speaking with a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan. Let's listen in.
Most successful election, in my opinion, in the history of Japan, won by the most ever. So we have a very popular, powerful woman, and she's a great woman. We have a very fine actor a lot, so I gave her an endorsement. And she had the most successful election, in my opinion, in the history of Japan, won by the most ever. So we have a very popular, powerful woman, and she's a great woman. We have a very fine relationship, and we're going to be talking about trade and many other things. And it's an honor to have you. Thank you very much.
皆様ありがとうございます。本日は非常に特別な方にいらしていただいております。歴史的な選挙の圧勝ということで、私と共通するものがあると思います。私たち素晴らしい絆を持っておりまして、だからこそ私の方からも応援のメッセージを出させていただきました。素晴らしい人であり、私も心から尊敬している方です。日本の歴史上最も素晴らしい選挙で圧勝したということで、人気の高い女性であり、すごい方だと私も思っております。本日に関しては貿易その他の課題について多く話をする予定です。
Thank you, Donald, for inviting me to the White House today.
Thank you.
My visit is timely. So, given the current situation, so.
Oh, please, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. You have a very good interpreter.
Yeah.
Who I've known for,
Your friend.
who I've known
Your
for a long
friend.
time with Shinzo,
Your
right?
friend. 今中東情勢も含めて、それから世界中の安全保障環境が非常に厳しい状況にあります。
Right now, situations in the Middle East and also the entire world, we are actually experiencing a very severe security environment.
そして世界経済もかなり厳しい影響を受けつつあります。
And also the global economy is now about to experience a huge hit because of this development.
でも私は世界の繁栄とそして平和に貢献できる世界中に平和と繁栄をもたらせるのはドナルドだけだと思っています。
But even against that backdrop, I firmly believe that it is only you, Donald, who can achieve peace across the world.
そのために私は諸外国に働きかけてしっかりと応援をしたいと思っています。
And to do so, I am ready to reach out to many of the partners in the international community to achieve our objective together.
今日私はそれを伝えに来ました。
So today, I came here at the White House to directly convey this message to you.
そしてイランに関してはもう核兵器の開発、これは許されてはならないことですから日本も働きかけをしてきました。
And speaking of the situation in Iran, Iran's development of nuclear weapons must never be allowed. And that is why we, Japan, have been urging them and also reaching out to other partners in the world.
そして我が国は周辺国に対する攻撃、ホルムズ海峡の実質的な閉鎖についてもこれは非難をし、そして茂木外務大臣からもイランの外務大臣に対してそれをやめるように申し入れをしてきました。
In addition, Japan condemns Iran's actions such as attacking the neighboring region and also the de facto or effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. As a matter of fact, my fellow minister, Minister Motegi, Foreign Minister Motegi, also had the direct exchange with the Iranian foreign minister and urged Iran to stop such activities.
Condemn. You'll let me know. You'll let me know.
それでとにかく今中東だけじゃなくてインド太平洋の安全保障環境も大変厳しい中にあります。そんな中でドナルドが日本に深い信頼を寄せてくれてで揺るぎない同盟にコミットメントしてくれていることに感謝をいたしております。
And also the security environment in the Indo-Pacific region is also becoming increasingly severe. Donald, you have shown deep trust in Japan and also the unwavering commitment to the Japan-US alliance. Once again, thank you very much for that.
今日は日本とアメリカが共に強く豊かになっていくための話し合いをしたいと思っています。
And today, I look forward to having a discussion on how we can cooperate to make our two nations, both Japan and the United States, stronger and more prosperous.
それから世界のエネルギーマーケットを落ち着かせるための提案も持ってまいりました。
And I also brought specific proposals to calm down the global energy market.
この後主に経済安全保障、重要鉱物ですとかエネルギーに関する協力、そしてお互いに強い経済を作るための成長のための話し合い、経済成長のための話し合いをしたいと思っています。Thank you, Donald.
So today, I really look forward to having our discussion, particularly focusing on our collaboration in economic security in the important areas such as energy and rare earth minerals. And also, I look forward to discussing with you how we can make our two economies stronger moving forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And you're doing a great job. Again, congratulations on the biggest win in the history of Japan. That's not bad. That's a pretty long history. That's a large nation with a great reputation, but it's a tremendous victory. Congratulations to everybody.